Greetings and salutations to all of you denizens of podcast land, you rock and rollers. It is time for another fantastic, exemplary episode of the Fortress of Rock. I, of course, am your humble and gracious host, the Ayatollah of rock and roll, the Maestro, Kevin Crane. As always, very appreciative, very happy, ecstatic even, to have you aboard for this extravaganza that we do each and every Friday night. This is episode 181 of The Fortress, dropping the last day of January 2025. We've got all of the usual segments lined up for you, so let's get into it. Let's start off, as we always do, with News of the World, our tribute to the late, great Freddie Mercury and Queen. Got a lot of live news for you, not necessarily concert tour news, a little bit of that. But this is going to be more a mixed bag, a potpourri of different types of live music involved here. And then we've got some new music news coming up later. But we'll start off with what I believe is the greatest news of the week. If you live in the Maryland area, specifically Columbia, Maryland, you have got to get out, get tickets for the M3 Festival as soon as humanly possible. This is looking spectacular. The M3 Festival, as I said, Columbia, Maryland, the Meriwether Post Pavilion. 3 nights of phenomenal rock and roll. Friday night, May the 2nd. I may not like his politics, may not like his attitude outside of performing on stage, but the great Sebastian Bach will be headlining Friday night, May the 2nd. Saturday night, May the 3rd, the long-awaited return to the stage of David Lee Roth. Winger will also be appearing Saturday night, May the 3rd. I'm going to miss some of these bands. There are a ton of bands playing. Go online to see the full lineup. And then Sunday, the momentum builds. You go Friday, and then Saturday gets better, and then Sunday is just ridiculous. Sunday, May the 4th. Yeah, I guess that's what? Star Wars Day, right? May the 4th be with you. Well, this lineup will knock you into another galaxy. Okay? We're starting off with a partial reunion of Ratt. Stephen Pearcy and Warren DeMartini have mended fences. They will be headlining night 3 of the M3 Festival. And they are talking about putting out new music. Now, Bobby Blotzer, the drummer, has always seemed to be the stuck wheel here in this machine. I don't know about Juan Crochet, the bass player, which way he goes, which side he's going to take, if any. But for now, pretty solid main core of Ratt back together. Lead vocalist Stephen Pearcy, lead guitarist Warren DeMartini. And Pearcy says we're not even going to fight about using the name Ratt. He says we lost Robin Crosby years and years ago. Ever since he died, it really hasn't been the same. I'm paraphrasing, but I'm giving you the general impression of what I got reading this announcement of Pearcy and DeMartini getting back together. He's not going to fight Blotzer about the name. I just wish these 4 members who are left could mend fences, get back together as soon as possible, and give us maybe 1 or 2 really great albums on the way out, or at least a farewell tour or something. But for now, you get Piercy DiMartini headlining night 3 of the M3 Festival. And keep in mind, these are the people playing the same day, and they aren't headlining. That's how important this Piercy DiMartini reunion is. Sunday, May the 4th will also feature Ace Frehley, Warrant, and Great White. I know Lita Ford's playing in there somewhere. I'm telling you, you got to get out to Maryland the first weekend of May. This is just phenomenal. A phenomenal lineup. Reminds me of the old Rocklahoma days, where it was just a treasure trove of all of those 80s bands and musicians that we loved. So kudos to the people behind the M3 Festival for making this happen. Now we've also got the Rock for Responders benefit concert. So we go from the East Coast out to the West Coast. February the 27th, San Pedro, California, in and around the Battleship Iowa Museum. Now this is a more of a general benefit concert. It's not a specific one tailored for the devastation of the recent wildfires. We'll get to Fire Aid in a minute. This is just a general benefit concert for all first responders. We need you. We love you. And as much as I give Sammy Hagar a hard time, because I do think sometimes he tends to talk out of both sides of his mouth a little too much, the man will show up for a good cause. So they're going to have a super group playing at this February 27th Rock for Responders concert. I guess they are calling themselves the Kings of Chaos. And this band will include Sammy Hagar, Robin Zander, lead singer of Cheap Trick, Matt Sorum, drums for The Cult and for Velvet Revolver and Guns N' Roses, and of course Steve Stevens, guitarist for Billy Idol, and there are some other people involved in this Kings of Chaos supergroup as well. So again, that happens February the 27th in San Pedro, California. Then we have Saturday Night Live's 50th anniversary season is just taken on this huge, monstrous, ridiculous life of its own. And we will discuss that a little bit more when we get to breakdown. But just announced a few days ago, SNL 50, the Homecoming Concert, which will air live on Peacock, Valentine's Day, February the 14th. I believe that is just 2 days before the big live blowout special on NBC, Sunday night, February the 16th. SNL 50, the Homecoming Concert, will feature, among others now, SNL, of course, known for a wide variety, a wide range of different types of musicians. So we will, of course, focus on the rock musicians there. Eddie Vedder of Pearl Jam, Jack White, Devo, the B-52s, David Byrne, and like I said, many other musicians involved as well. So that looks like it could be interesting. Now, last night, as we dropped this episode on January the 31st, last night, January the 30th, was the dual concerts we discussed in Los Angeles, Fire Aid. Now, I have not watched it. I did not watch it. I have expressed to you my misgivings about this. Of course, we should do everything we can to help the people of California with this wildfire situation, but I am just very, very upset and disappointed that almost everybody, except for maybe our new president, seems to have ignored what happened in 2024 to the people of North Carolina who are still suffering. And I don't see all of these big shots. I don't see Green Day and Dave Grohl, Pink, all of them. I don't see any of them rallying around to help the people of North Carolina. It just reeks of politics, and I think it stinks. So I don't know. Will I watch Fire Aid at some point in time? Maybe. Maybe not. When I heard that Green Day was kicking things off, my radar immediately set off alarms. Because I've told you guys in the past, I've seen Green Day once, and they will politicize anything and everything they can. Billy Joe Armstrong is one of my least favorite people in rock and roll. But I guess the headline highlight of last night was there was I guess as best as you could have, a Nirvana reunion. You had Dave Grohl, you had Chris Novoselic, you had Pat Smear. Of course, Grohl and Smear both are in Foo Fighters now. But without Kurt Cobain, can you really call it a Nirvana reunion? And I guess they had a rotating group of vocalists who would step in. Now, tying into Fire Aid, Def Leppard was not at the shows as far as I've heard. But they have released a benefit single tied directly in to Fire Aid, their cover of the classic Benny King song, Stand By Me. All proceeds going to Fire Aid. And I'm not trying to be disparaging, but I have listened to it. Ugh. This it has the same feel if you go back to that album they put out where they were backed by a symphony orchestra, and that was an extremely hit and miss affair. This sounds exactly like something from that, and it's a miss. Sorry. But I think if you go out and just listen to it, even though it'll be pennies on the dollar, you listen to it on your favorite streaming service, you'll still be getting something. And if we all do it, I've already listened to it. If you do it, your neighbor does it, your best friend does it, your wife does it, your husband does it, whatever, the money will add up and it will go to a good cause. Okay, now in more traditional touring news, Kansas and 38 Special. There is a very good pairing there. If you've never seen either, or I recommend you seek out tickets. Both are very, very solid live. So Kansas and 38 Special have teamed up. Now there's only 14 dates in the U.S. right now. In June and July. I don't know if they're going to be adding any more. As an extra treat on a few of these dates, I heard they will be joined by the Outlaws. Oh, what an incredible triple bill that would be. So again, Kansas and 38 Special, 14 U.S. dates, June and July here in 2025. And then if you really want to go back to the 80s, and who doesn't want to go back to the 80s? Really, who doesn't? Times were so much better. Check out this triple bill. Simple Minds, Modern English, and Soft Cell. 24 dates in North America, May and June of 2025. So you can definitely get your 80s fix there. Again, Simple Minds, Modern English, and Soft Cell, touring in May and June. Now, unfortunately, we do have one moment of silence, pretty significant one in terms of the history of rock and roll. I'm not going to pretend that I know the music of Marianne Faithfull, but I do know her connection, especially to the Rolling Stones and to some of the biggest artists in the 60s. Some called her a muse for the Stones. I know she was very close with Mick Jagger. So Marianne Faithfull passed away here recently, so thoughts and prayers go out to her family and friends. Now, I mentioned we've got some new release news. A band that I have always kind of liked, another one of those under-the-radar bands that probably not too many of you know about, is a band called The Hold Steady. And they've been around for quite a while. And they are one of the few prolific bands still out there that still put out new music every couple years. Now, what they do is they will do an album as a group, and then their lead singer and songwriter, Craig Finn, will do a solo album. So basically you get new music from either or, The Hold Steady or Craig Finn, pretty much every year. And that cycle's been going on, I would say, for at least a decade, if not longer. Well, it's time for Craig Finn in this cycle to have something new out. So Craig Finn, again, frontman for The Hold Steady, his new album, Always Been, will be out April the 4th. By the way, we have confirmation now. April the 4th is also the official release date for the new album from LA Guns, Leopard Skin. We told you here about a month or so ago that we knew it was coming out at some point in April, but now that is coming out April the 4th. So, April 4th, good day for new music. Leopard Skin by LA Guns, and Always Been by Craig Finn. Don't normally like to talk about reissues. Don't normally like to talk about box sets or really live albums. Maybe a little bit more with the live music. Now, these two bands, though, that we're going to talk about here for the last few minutes in News of the World, I love. So we're going to make exceptions to the rule for these two bands. First up, Rush. A gargantuan, monumental box set called Rush 50 will be out March the 21st. Now, I'm not going to go into all the details, but there are 5 different versions of Rush 50. So you'll have to jump online and get all the deets. I believe that's how the kids say details on all these different versions to find out, number one, if you have to take out a loan to get the most expensive one, which you probably would have to, take out a second mortgage on your house, or you pare it down to the still expensive, lesser versions. And I'm not ripping on Rush. I promise you I'm not. Everybody's doing this. So you just gotta save your money, spend it judiciously on the few box sets that you really and truly want. Now, this Rush 50 box set will have, I looked through the track list, they're saying that there are 7 previously unreleased tracks on this collection. I think they're counting a 3-song medley as 3 separate songs instead of 1 song, because when I did the math, when I looked, I only came up with 5. But again, if you take that 3-song medley at the end, which I believe was recorded, if not on their final show, it was recorded on their farewell tour, what turned out to be their farewell tour. So anyway, nitpicking a little bit here. There are a few unreleased tracks here on Rush 50. Most of them are live songs. Most of them are from early on in Rush's career. So, the Rush fanatics out there, and I know you're out there, Rush has one of the most devoted followings of any rock and roll band, past, present, or future. Again, March the 21st, Rush 50. Hit your local record store. I'm sure you can buy it on Amazon as well. Then finally, this land is your land, this land is my land, this land on the Fortress of Rock is Van Halen land. We will do anything and everything we can to discuss anything involving Van Halen, if it's remotely relevant. Now, coming off the discussion here of the Rush 50 box set, this is somewhat appropriate and somewhat fitting because you'll remember last year, 2024, I know it was only a month ago, but Van Halen put out a deluxe edition of For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. And I was a little upset and I was a little bitter because one of the discs in this entire package, this box set, was their free concert from 1991 in Dallas, Texas. And I'm a Van Halen completist as much as I can humanly possibly be. So of course I have For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. I really didn't need to go out and buy the expanded box set deluxe remastered edition. But wow, I really, really wanted to get my hot little hands on that Dallas concert. And the news is great for people like me. Van Halen must have heard. Of course, Eddie. We'll talk a little bit more about Eddie later. The late, great Eddie Van Halen. Van Halen live in Dallas. 1991 will be out on vinyl and CD March the 28th. Now this was kind of weird because they announced it and then a couple days later they pushed the release date back from March the 7th to March the 28th. So March the 28th is the most current up-to-date release date I have for you. But I'm all over this. I am all over this. And this will be one of those rule-breaking reviews. When this comes out, we will review this in our breakdown segment. Once again, Van Halen live in Dallas. 1991 out. March the 28th on CD and vinyl. And Amazon, I'm not trying to promote Amazon. I just want to give you guys the best information I've got. Amazon has got it for a really good price pre-order right now. So if you want this, go out and get it. I believe it's $12.99, which is a great price nowadays for a brand new CD. There you go, kids. That is news of the world. keeping you up to date on what is currently going on in the world of rock and roll, in the world of classic rock. So now it's time to move on to the breakdown segment. Of course, breakdown is our tribute to the late, great Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. And we're going to do something a little bit different here this week. I know you're kind of getting used to that because of the fact that outside of the new Tremonti album, we haven't had any new music hit yet in 2025 in terms of albums. So we kind of had to make do and piece some things together and do things a little differently. So I don't know if you watched it this past Monday night, but I did. What we're going to do now is we're going to delve into the 3-hour special that aired on NBC this past Monday night. Ladies and gentlemen, 50 years of Saturday Night Live music. Okay, so what you need to know about the Maestro is that there are some touchstone moments early on in my life, let's say preteen moments, that I still look back on as I'm pretty much 2/3 of the way through my life. And they are ingrained, they are embossed, they are emblazoned on my memory, on my frontal lobe. Now, if you're into sports, I look back at my life and I go, I have had a Super Bowl from Super Bowl I on. I am a child of the Super Bowl. So every year of my life, there has been a Super Bowl. And every year before me, there was no Super Bowl. So the Super Bowl is important to me. Saturday Night Live is very important to me. Now, I watched Saturday Night Live when I was younger with my mom. She got a kick out of it. I remember she loved Rosanna Dana. Of course, that was Gilda Radner. And my parents were very cool about letting me stay up late, and they weren't overly concerned about the adult content. I did very well in school, so it was kind of my reward for getting straight A's, right? So Saturday Night Live has a big connection with me as well. I've pretty much watched that since it first aired. Now, when I say that, please keep in mind I have not even remotely thought about watching SNL since probably 2010. I don't think it's funny anymore. I think it's more mean-spirited. I think it's all about politics. There are very rare instances. Last year? Maybe 2023? I can't remember for sure. They had the one great skit with Ryan Gosling, Beavis and Butthead. That reminded me of the old school SNL. But for the most part, I have not watched the show in 15 years. But one of the things that I always loved about it, one of the things I always looked forward to, was the music. And so this past Monday night, we got, ladies and gentlemen, 50 years of SNL music. A 3-hour, now that includes advertising, a 3-hour documentary about the influence and impact of music on Saturday Night Live. It was not just about the artists who played on Saturday Night Live. It was also about skits that involved music, impressions of musicians. So theoretically, it should have been an all-encompassing documentary, and for the most part it was. My complaints are few. Let's put it that way. I thought they did an overall very good job. I believe Questlove put this together. And if you don't know who Questlove is, completely understandable. I barely do. But I'll tell you this. The man has done some phenomenal work in music documentaries lately. And this one's no exception. But there are a couple nitpicking points I have. Two big ones. And I'll get to them in a minute. But over 3 hours, we get a little bit of everything. We go from Eddie Murphy doing James Brown to the Blues Brothers to Adam Sandler songs. The Hanukkah song, of course, an all-time classic. We get a discussion of The Lonely Island, which I figured was coming. There were some things that I knew were going to be in this documentary that I wasn't going to be overly thrilled about, but I knew they were coming, so that kind of took away any kind of disappointment I was going to feel, like The Lonely Island and Andy Samberg's pre-recorded little music rap songs that he would do. Lazy Sunday, I guess, was the first one that kicked everything off. And then later on we got Justin Timberlake. I don't really want to say the name of the song. Something in a Box. Because again, I try my best. I slipped once last week. I try my best to keep the Fortress of Rock clean. But I do not find Andy Samberg funny in the least. Although those two, the most famous, I think, that The Lonely Island ever really did, those two, Lazy Sunday and Justin Timberlake in a Box, let's call it that, those are very funny. But you guys know this is the Fortress of Rock. Rap and hip-hop, not necessarily my forte or my favorite. And we do have a little section in here about rap and hip-hop. Again, figured it was coming. And it's fine. Didn't bother me a bit. We've got bad performances. We've got the avant-garde performances. That was all in the first half. Yes, I'm a geek. I did take notes because I knew I was going to have to review this for you kids here tonight, Friday night, January the 31st. So I wanted to make sure I could keep everything over 3 hours, my impressions, my opinions, my thoughts fairly coherent. So what I just gave you is pretty much the first half, the first hour and a half, the first half of the documentary. The second half delves more into, starts off with the nuts and the bolts. And they take Bad Bunny, again, not going to discuss Bad Bunny and his music, but they take Bad Bunny and use him as an example of what a musical artist goes through for an entire week of preparation, not just to be the musical guest, but to be the host as well. So it's kind of the people that have played the dual role of host and musical guest. They do a nice job of showing what you have to, when you're doing the double duty, what you have to go through for the entire week. So again, doesn't matter if it's Bad Bunny or whoever, it's an interesting look at that process. Then you've got the impressions where the cast members will take on the persona of John Belushi, of course, his infamous portrayal of Joe Cocker, Jimmy Fallon and Mick Jagger, Maya Rudolph and Beyonce. So good stuff, really good stuff. Fun, very fun. Then you get controversial moments. Elvis Costello, where he started a song. And I never got 100% confirmation from the show on this, but it seemed like he stopped his first song because it had mentions of Nazis in it. And because infamously, he stopped his song after about 10, 15 seconds and went into radio. And I think it's because he realized he picked the wrong song to play on live network TV. Then you've got the lip syncing scandal with Ashley Simpson, the anarchy of the performance by punk band Fear, and Kanye West. Just anything and everything involving Kanye West was a mess. And then they slide into 9/11, which was I thought, very fitting, very appropriate with Paul Simon. They discuss how they got through the pandemic. And that featured a lot of Jack White. And I'll tell you what, if you watch this, if you did watch it or if you're going to watch it, it's available on Peacock if you missed it when it aired on Monday. You get towards the end and they're discussing the pandemic, and Morgan Wallen, the country star, canceled or something happened. He couldn't perform. Jack White stepped in at the last minute. They showed Jack White's performance, most of it, and I'm telling you, he played a little snippet of Eruption. Maybe about 5 seconds, but he played a snippet of Eruption. I am sure of it. And then they do redeem themselves at the end, because there were a couple specific things I was waiting for. And I got one of them at the end, when they showed kind of a little bit of a montage at the end, and then over the closing credits, they showed Living Color, and then they showed Eddie Van Halen. Because I knew Eddie Van Halen. Van Halen had never played Saturday Night Live as a band, but Eddie had sat in once or twice with the band. And they did the right thing, and they showed a quick couple-second clip of him. Although not with the great guitarists. Now, that section was only about 10 seconds. But still, how do you not put Eddie Van Halen in with the great guitarists who've played on SNL? But they still showed him. I'll take it. Like I said, Living Color. They did show a lot of great bands, even if it was only for a second or two. So they did, again, a really good job putting together this overview of 50 years of music, the influence of music, the music comedy on Saturday Night Live. Now, my two major complaints, because you know I'm the maestro, and I always have complaints. I will always try to find the positive. If something is good, it's well done, it's well performed, it's well written. But nothing is perfect. Very rarely, let's say, is anything perfect, except for maybe the first 6 albums from Van Halen. The two major complaints I have about, ladies and gentlemen, 50 years of SNL music. Number one, and this I can explain it away, but I still don't like it, is because to me, by far and away, not only the funniest, greatest music-related sketch of all time on SNL, but probably the funniest overall sketch of all time on SNL was the Blue Oyster Cult We Need More Cowbell sketch with Christopher Walken. You know it, you love it. Will Ferrell wearing a shirt that's way too small for him is guts jiggling and hanging out. Jimmy Fallon and Horatio Sands can't keep a straight face. I can't do justice to the Christopher Walken delivery. I like what I'm hearing, but I need more cowbell. And they keep over and over again trying to do Don't Fear the Reaper with Will Ferrell banging it out on the cowbell. How does that not, here's my complaint, how does that not show up in this retrospective? I'm not kidding you. It's not anywhere to be found in 3 hours. And you know why? And I think this is a terrible, terrible job on the part of NBC. If Lorne Michaels was involved in this, which you got to believe he was, terrible job. Questlove, for all the praise I just gave him, terrible job for excluding the cowbell sketch. Because you know why? There is a separate documentary series on Peacock where they devote a full episode to the cowbell sketch. So they probably figured, let's get people to watch that and not focus too much on it here in the music special. And that makes sense to a point. But you're telling me, if you're going to call this a comprehensive look at 50 years of music on SNL, you can't show it for 10 or 15 seconds? Give it its credit, give it its due, and then if we want more, we'll watch the other documentary. But to exclude it completely is, honestly, it's egregious and it's pathetic. So that's a big downgrade for me on this documentary, just for that one omission. And then the other problem I had, there was a section early on in the second half, let's say about an hour and 45 minutes in, involving rebellion and protests when it comes to musical performances on Saturday Night Live. And of course that included Sinead O'Connor and her ripping up the picture of the Pope. I'm fine with that. That kind of protest, I'm fine with. I'm not trying to upset Catholics, but I'm saying if you're going to rip up a picture or wear a t-shirt, okay, you're not, number one, you're not joking about it. You're taking your cause and your viewpoint seriously, but number two, you're also not physically hurting anybody else. And the Sinead O'Connor moment is iconic. That definitely needed to be covered. The part I didn't like in this little subsection was Tom Morello. And let me just tell you, and I've probably said this, but it's been a while. Maybe a year or two ago was the last time I got on a rant or a tangent about how much I dislike Tom Morello. He's well-spoken. I know the man's intelligent, but there's something wrong with him. And this just proved it again to me. He's brought in to discuss Rage Against the Machine. You know I don't like them, but that's fine. There are plenty of other artists that they covered that I don't like, that I thought they did a fine job giving them their due. But the Rage Against the Machine performance that was brought up here, I'll tell you why it sickened and disgusted me. Now, obviously they were trying to play some games when they matched up the host for that night with the musical artist, because Steve Forbes was the host. Steve Forbes, of course, was in politics at that moment, running for president, very, very milquetoast, namby-pamby, straight edge, straight arrow type guy. But he represented, quote-unquote, the system. And of course, we all know Tom Morello hates the system. So, of course, Rage Against the Machine tried to do everything they could to upset the apple cart. They wanted to play their set with upside down flags, I believe, draped on their speakers. And at the last second, the crew from SNL pulled them off. So they didn't allow that. But then I guess what happened was they went backstage. They were all fired up. They were still angry. They were still mad. Those goofballs, those goons that I cannot believe are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That I guess their bass player ripped up one of the flags, tied it up together, made it into a nice big solid ball, and then went across the hall to the host dressing room, hoping he could throw it and hit Steve Forbes. And it turns out Steve Forbes was on stage at the time, so he pretty much almost hit one or two of the family members of Steve Forbes with this thing. And as he put it together, a pretty heavy, sizable mass. This torn up flag. Number one, I'm not even talking about tearing up the American flag and how pathetic that is. But then as Morello's recounting this tale, he's laughing. Isn't this funny? Isn't this great that our bass player almost hurt somebody in Steve Forbes' family, and we really meant to hurt Steve Forbes? What kind of sick, demented, twisted man are you, Tom Morello? Seriously. I had massive, massive problems with that. That should never have been included. Because by showing it, by telling us this story, and Morello doing it in his own words, he comes off looking terrible. He comes off sounding like a sociopath. And he will once again prove to me that when it comes to politics, I don't want nothing to do with Hollywood and celebrities and musical performers and their political views, because they are dangerous and they are borderline sick. So those two things, the exclusion of the cowbell sketch and this awful Tom Morello Rage Against the Machine story, took what could have otherwise been an exemplary look back at 50 years of music on SNL, and instead it just turns out to be pretty good. I'll recommend it to you guys, but I've already given you the buyer beware for a couple things. A couple things that will downgrade it. Maybe not to you, but at least to me. So let's get back into music, shall we? Got a couple songs to review this week. We've saved most of the big backlog of songs and singles for next week. But this week we still got a couple. And number one is the new song from the Spin Doctors. I believe this is one of the first new songs they've put out in over a decade. With the new album coming out, we discussed that, Face Full of Cake. The first single is Still a Gorilla. And I love it. Am I a huge Spin Doctors fan? No. But I do like their songs. I do. Little Miss Can't Be Wrong. Come on. Is it Two Princes? Come on, those are good songs. Still a Gorilla is right up there with those, in my humble opinion. It's fun. This is a little bit edgier. This rocks a little bit more than those songs. I love the lyrics. The lyrics, you can tell they're trying to find words to rhyme with with Gorilla, like Godzilla and Vanilla, but they do it in a great, great way. And sometimes you just gotta have fun with your music. And sometimes we take it too seriously. Let's talk to Tom Morello about that, shall we? So the new song from the Spin Doctors, Still a Gorilla. I love it. A little bit more rockin', a little bit more harder edged than what we remember from back in their heyday, but still you can still hear their personality, their sense of humor. This is a very, very, very fun song, and I highly recommend you listen to the new Spin Doctors song, Still a Gorilla. And then we've got another new song from the Cold Stairs, one of our, what we call our house bands, a smaller band that you guys might not know. We've got about half a dozen of them here on the Fortress of Rock that I follow, that I try to pass along their new music to you. I personally love these bands. That's why I try to encourage you to give them a shot. And the Cold Stairs are one of those bands. They've been putting out a lot of new music over the last few years. Their latest new song is Automobile. And this again is another fun song. Notice the theme here in Breakdown: fun, Saturday Night Live, comedy, Spin Doctors, fun, silly, goofy lyrics, automobile. Even though it is rooted in the blues, the Cold Stairs are hard blues, rock and roll. And you can definitely hear the influence of ZZ Top. This song definitely oozes ZZ Top. But Automobile is your basic, straightforward, double entendre. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Baby, won't you let me drive your automobile? And we all know what that means. Won't get into detail because, again, trying to keep it clean for the kids. But in a way, just like Still a Gorilla, Automobile is just a cool song that's just trying to have fun, trying to distract you from the labors and the troubles of life for 3.5 minutes. As I said, hard rock, blues, ZZ Top feel to it. How could you not like it? How could, maybe you don't love it, but how could you not like it? So I will also give an enthusiastic thumbs up to the Cold Stairs' new song, Automobile. So recommendations, good stuff, good vibrations all around with SNL music, 50 years, Spin Doctors, and the Cold Stairs. So as I am oozing with positivity, which is a rarity for me, I'm going to saunter over to the garage here at the Fortress of Rock, and we are going to jump into the rock and roll DeLorean. Doc Brown, my trusty pilot, firing up the DeLorean to 1.21 gigawatts as we get ready to head into the rock and roll time stream to look back at anniversaries of classic album releases, moments in rock history, and birthdays. Yes, it is time for I Want to Go Back, our tribute to the late, great Eddie Money. But as we slowly get out of the garage here at the Fortress, head into the time stream, gonna take a couple minutes to get up to speed, so I'm gonna take care of some business. You found us. Thank you so much for that. But you have options and you have choices. Life should be all about options and choices. wherever you might be listening to us. If you're happy, stick with it. But maybe you got some trepidation, a little bit of stress about it, you can move over to somebody else. You can find the Fortress of Rock on Spotify, Pocket Casts, Apple, iHeartRadio, Overcast, Amazon Music, Castbox, Audible, and Good Pods. Then, of course, you can always check out the Facebook page. You will always be able to find links there to the latest episodes of the Fortress of Rock, but we also do some other fun stuff on the Facebook page. Friday nights, around the same time as this episode drops, the new episode every Friday night, right around that time, you also get the Weekend Rock Project. Now, the Weekend Rock Project, I give you a word, a phrase, an idea, a name, something. You have to come back with your favorite rock song that fits the bill. And I can tell you right now, I have already. Sometimes I do the podcast episode first. Sometimes I do the Weekend Rock Project first. Goes back and forth. I have the Weekend Rock Project already out and posted as I'm recording this. And let me just tell you kids one thing. We're going to do this one of two ways. We're going to do it the easy way, or we're going to do it the hard way. So we're looking for your favorite songs that feature the word easy or the word hard. We'll take variations, hard, hardest, easy, easier, easiest, whatever. Hard and easy. Those are your two words. Give me your favorite songs that fit the bill for this weekend's Weekend Rock Project on our Facebook page. And then Sunday will be New Music Sunday. Every Sunday afternoon, I post a video off of YouTube, a link to a video. Whether it's a fully produced video, a visualizer, a lyric video, whatever it might be. Even if it's just a static image of an album cover. As long as I'm getting you new music, I am doing my job. And I know, by the way, I'm ahead of the game this weekend. It's probably because there's no football to distract me. I'm ahead of the game. I've already got the Weekend Rock Project done, and I already know what your New Music Sunday is coming up in 2 days. We'll discuss it more later. And then, of course, I like to think I know what I'm talking about when it comes to classic rock. I definitely know what I'm doing when it comes to talking about classic rock, but I still need some help. Still need some assistance. Still need some guidance every once in a while. And I have three main sources to give me that help. UltimateClassicRock.com, ThisDayInMusic.com, and the Van Halen Newsdesk.com. All right. Doc Brown giving me a thumbs up. That means we are ready to go here. We're going to start off with anniversaries this week for January the 31st. This one is a little personal to me, and I'll explain why. January the 31st, 2017. John Wetton passed away. John Wetton, if you don't know, if you're listening to this podcast, I would hope you know who John Wetton is. John Wetton, of course, notable for being a member of King Crimson, and then, of course, being a part of the supergroup Asia. Personal for me because John Wetton died literally months before I was supposed to see Asia in concert. I did see Asia. They had rushed in a fill-in, a replacement for John Wetton. They were opening for Journey at the Fort Wayne Memorial Coliseum. And I have so many vivid memories of that night. And of course, disappointed beyond belief about not getting to see the great John Wetton front Asia. But we had a really hard time getting into the Coliseum parking lot. We actually ended up missing the first third, maybe the first half of Asia's set. The traffic was backed out onto the highway, onto the main drag in Fort Wayne. And I remember that my daughter, that was one of the concerts she and I got to go to together along with her aunt and her uncle. And as we were stuck in traffic, probably still a mile out from being able to get into the Coliseum parking lot, guys were selling counterfeit t-shirts on the side of the road. And of course, I'm always in for a good counterfeit t-shirt. Sorry, I apologize. I buy the CDs. Okay, so don't tell me I don't spend money on these bands. But you're going to charge me $40, $50 for a t-shirt, and I can get it from somebody else, and it looks just as good for $20. I'm taking the $20 t-shirt. Sorry. But again, I'm not going to really apologize because I spend my money on these bands in other ways. But, so anyway, we bought a couple t-shirts, my daughter and I bought them for us, and he hands them to us through the window, hand him the $40, and you could just, your eyes were watering from the stink of marijuana, the marijuana smoke embedded into these shirts. So immediately, of course, I had to take them home and run them through the washer once or twice. But again, those are the kind of crazy, weird memories that stick with you. That's why concerts are awesome. But again, the most profound memory from that concert was the fact that John Wetton had passed away earlier in the year. So thoughts and prayers to the family and friends of John Wetton, Asia fans all across the globe. On this day, January the 31st, 2009, Dewey Martin passed away. Dewey Martin, drummer for Buffalo Springfield. On this day, January the 31st, 1981, Blondie, The Tide is High. Not really one of my favorite songs by Blondie. Not really one of my favorite songs in general. But a lot of people love that song. It was the #1 single in the U.S. on this day in 1981. On this day, January the 31st, 1970, the Jackson 5, I Want You Back, was the #1 single in the U.S. Again, on this day in 1970. And then finally on this day, for anniversaries, January the 31st, 1967. Keep in mind that there were promotional videos before MTV, before the early 80s. On this day in 1967, the Beatles wrapped up filming their promotional video for Strawberry Fields Forever. All right, let's move on to birthdays here for January the 31st. We'll start off with January the 31st, 1967. We talked about Nirvana earlier, their reunion, so to speak, at Fire Aid. On this day in 1967, I can't say it was their original drummer because Nirvana went through a bunch of drummers before Dave Grohl, but this was the one that had the longest tenure before Dave Grohl. Chad Channing, drummer for Nirvana, born on this day in 1967. Born on this day, January the 31st, 1964. Jeff Hanneman, guitarist for Slayer. Born on this day, January the 31st, 1956. John Lydon, a.k.a. Johnny Rotten, lead singer for the Sex Pistols. Born on this day, January the 31st, 1954, Adrian Vandenberg. Of course, you can debate what he's most well known for. Some would say because of his stint with Whitesnake during their heyday. That's where they would go. I still loved his band Vandenberg. And the one hit they had, the great, phenomenal, awesome song, Burning Heart. It's amazing to me how we never hear Burning Heart on the radio anymore. It was one of the greatest hard rock songs of the 1980s. Adrian Vandenberg, great guitarist. Born on this day in 1954. Born on this day, January the 31st, 1951. The man, the myth, the legend, one of my all-time favorites. Harry Wayne Casey. Yes. Frontman, lead singer for my favorite disco band of all time, Casey and the Sunshine Band. And then finally, born on this day, January the 31st, 1946. Terry Kath, guitarist for Chicago, unfortunately passed away way too soon from an accidental gunshot injury. Thankfully, Chicago continued, but this would have been Terry Kath's birthday today, born on this day, 1946. And that's going to do it for I Want to Go Back, our weekly jaunt into the rock and roll time stream. Now you know what we do. As Doc Brown pulls us back into the garage here at the Fortress of Rock, shuts down the DeLorean, I'm going to wander back into the studio, settle back in, starting to dim the lights, getting ready to enjoy my weekend as I hope you enjoy yours. But we looked at the present day situation with rock and roll in segment 1, News of the World, and segment 2, Breakdown. We just looked at the past with I Want to Go Back, so now it's time to look into the crystal ball, look into the future of rock and roll. What are we going to be talking about over the next few weeks here on the Fortress of Rock? Well, this is probably the least preparation, the sketchiest plans I have ever had for the Fortress of Rock. Next week is going to be just a bunch of songs, and we'll get into those songs here in a minute. But I say it seems like every week, and I'm sick of saying it. I'm sure you're sick of hearing it. There's just not enough good new music out there. It'll pick up. It will. But it seems like it always, year by year, takes a little bit longer to start getting new releases, to start getting new albums out there. So next week, episode 182 of the Fortress of Rock, dropping on February the 7th, 2025. And I hope I didn't say 2024 earlier. It usually takes 2 or 3 months for me to actually lock it into my brain that we've actually switched years. February the 7th, 2025. We'll just have a bunch of songs to review, and then going forward, I'll give you a very vague, rough, maybe possibly plan or indication of what we're going to discuss. If I get around to watching Fire Aid. And again, I'm not sure I mentioned my problems with Fire Aid at the beginning of the podcast. If I get around to watching it, I'll review that for you in the coming weeks. I might also review the Saturday Night Live homecoming concert, the SNL 50 homecoming concert, in a couple weeks. The earliest that would happen would be episode 184, dropping on February the 21st. Again, not sure. I'm not going to commit to it. I don't have a commitment problem, but I'm not going to waste my time or your time either on something I don't have a good feeling about. And then I might actually, for breakdown in the coming weeks, take us back in time. I'm beginning to wonder if I shouldn't start doing some kind of a classic review segment in breakdown. Since we're not getting a ton of new music, maybe I should revisit classic albums or albums from years and years ago that I never really got to review, not only for you, but for myself, never really gave them a fair shake. For instance, I believe within the last couple weeks I mentioned Steely Dan's Asia, and how they talked about that album a lot and how brilliantly it was produced in the documentary on HBO Max about yacht rock. And that got me interested in going back and listening to Asia. Now, what I listened to, I didn't even make it through the album. Outside of the big hits, didn't overly impress me. Right now, I'm interested in David Bowie's last album, Black Star. That's kind of where I'm thinking we might end up going here, to fill in the gaps for breakdown until we get the spring flood of new albums to lead us into summer. But I also watched, for the first time ever, I watched Gimme Shelter, the classic documentary about the Rolling Stones and the 1969 mess that was their Altamont Speedway concert. So we're probably going to get a review of that from me in the next week or two in breakdown here on the Fortress of Rock. Now, I mentioned all these songs that I'm saving up for you guys, even though we reviewed 2 this week, and of course 2 recommended songs: Spin Doctor's Still a Gorilla and The Cold Stares Automobile. In some way, shape, or form, most of these songs are going to make it onto Breakdown next week. 3 new songs from the Doobie Brothers. We mentioned their brand new album, Walk This Road, is out June the 6th. They've released 3 songs off the album already. The title track, Walk This Road, along with Call Me and the Hyena. We mentioned Def Leppard. We mentioned the charity single, the benefit single, their cover of Stand By Me to benefit Fire Aid and the victims of the LA wildfires. And I did not give you the best first impression of what I thought of that song, but we'll probably maybe still review it. I don't think it'll be positive, but we'll get into more detail as to why I don't like it, most likely next week. Billy Gibbons, this one will definitely be on the slate for next week. His new song, featured in the Paramount Plus show Landman, Living It Up Down in Texas. Also, definitely will be part of this group of songs we're reviewing next week. Close Enemies, new band featuring Aerosmith's Tom Hamilton, lead-off track from their upcoming album, Sound of a Train. And I mentioned Craig Finn in our opening segment, News of the World. Craig Finn of the Hold Steady and his new solo album, Always Been. The lead-off single for that album is out, People of Substance. That one will probably as well be reviewed here next week on the Fortress of Rock. Then finally, last but not least, I will definitely say last but not least, just found out about this song about 9-10 hours ago. One-time only collaboration. This is not going to lead, as far as I know, to a group being formed or a continuing collaboration that leads to an album. This is a one-off, one-song only deal. But when you're dealing with Sammy Hagar, who knows? But this is a phenomenal pairing, even if it's only for one song. And you gotta give Sammy credit. Sammy Hagar knows how to pair himself up with, despite the fact that he is, of his own right, an exemplary guitar player. He always pairs himself up with the best of the best on guitar, whether it be Eddie Van Halen, Joe Satriani, or now Joe Bonamassa. Sammy Hagar and Joe Bonamassa have released the song Fortune Teller Blues. And it's very cool. Very, very cool song. So, Fortune Teller Blues by Sammy Hagar and Joe Bonamassa. We'll have that for you next week in Breakdown. Now, there could be more songs that pop up, but that group that I just mentioned to you, most of those, if not all of those, will be featured in Breakdown next week. And that leads us into the Fortress of Rock charts for January the 31st, 2025. Now, you know we do the Fortress of Rock charts because of the influence that the Billboard charts had on me back when I was younger and listened to Casey Kasem and America's Top 40 back when the charts actually made sense and mattered, which they don't anymore. So how do you combat insanity and stupidity? You take the problem, you make it your own, you fix it. And that's what we've done here at the Fortress of Rock. So now we do our own charts to let you guys know the best album and the top songs every week. It was a tight battle for number one on the album charts this week. But I have a rule. Among many other rules, I have a rule. I will get to a point, even though I have been listening to an album more than others. That's usually the number one indicator for me that I need to make an album the number one album of the week on the Fortress of Rock. I've listened to it more than other albums, but I also will look back and see how many times, because of that, have I made it the number one album, and is it really that good where it deserves week after week after week at number one? And you guys know, if you listened to last week's podcast, I wasn't over the moon enthusiastic about Smashing Pumpkins' new album, Agori Mori Me. Now, it's already been number one for a couple weeks, non-consecutive, on our charts. And I almost made it number one again. This is once again a product of not having much more in the way of new music to listen to. But thanks to the company, I will not mention their name, but thanks to the company that I ordered Tremonti's The End Will Show Us How from, and massive, stupid, ridiculous delays in getting the album, the physical CD, shipped to me. And it's not Amazon, I will say that. It is not Amazon. It's another company. Amazon upset me because they wouldn't drop the price to some reasonable semblance of a decent price. So I found it somewhere else, and even though I didn't pay as much as I would have on Amazon, I paid in other ways. I obviously paid in other ways, in that it took them almost a month to ship the CD to me. But it showed up a couple days ago, and I had to listen to my actual beautiful new physical CD of Tremonti's The End Will Show Us How, and since it's really better than Agori Mori Me, once again, Tremonti, number one, only on the album charts this week, though. Tremonti is number one here on the Fortress of Rock with The End Will Show Us How. Our top songs. I always pick a couple because I cheat. It's really hard to pick just one song. I like to pick two. Could I do a top five? I probably could, and I might. I started thinking about that today. Should I do a top five with songs? Could be something coming. Could be a change. A change is coming. Possibly. To our song list, our song chart, our song countdown here on the Fortress of Rock. But for right now, we're going to stick with just the top couple. And for the second week in a row, one of those songs is Still a Gorilla by the Spin Doctors. It's a great song, and I don't care if the music snobs out there are going to snicker and laugh at me for saying it. It's a great, great song. Sharing the honors this week with Still a Gorilla is the brand new song I just mentioned. And even though it just came out today, January the 31st, as far as popping up on my radar, I've listened to it 3 or 4 times already. I love it. Sammy Hagar and Joe Bonamassa, Fortune Teller Blues. So once again, your number 1 album this week on the Fortress of Rock charts, Tremonti's The End Will Show Us How. Your top songs, Spin Doctor's Still a Gorilla, and Fortune Teller Blues from Sammy Hagar and Joe Bonamassa. And that is it. That's going to do it for another extraordinary edition of the Fortress of Rock. As always, can't do this without you listening. I appreciate you. Love you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me every Friday night to discuss the music that we love. Classic rock and roll. Primarily 70s, 80s, early 90s. We'll do it all again in 7 days. I am the Maestro. You are who you are. Weather's getting better here. Snow is almost melted, getting a lot of rain, but I'll take it. Definitely better than 10 degrees. 40 degrees and rain, I'll take it. Hopefully the weather is good where you are. Enjoy it while you can. I'm sure winter is not done with us yet. Love the ones you're with. Until we meet again down the road in 7 days. Once again, I am the Maestro, Kevin Crane. Peace out.